Hello, and welcome to another decisions training video. Today, we are going to be discussing global constants and project variables. So I'd like to start by giving a history of these in the product, and then we can go from there. So, in Decisions versions 8 and below, global constants were the way to have data that is universally accessible throughout your environment. You could create things such as integration passwords, connection strings, or all sorts of other types of variables, not just string values, to be used in projects wherever you need them. You could use them in basically any flow, rule, form, just anywhere you had access to your flow data by default, you had access to these constants that could be used to improve your process and reduce redundancy. However, when Decisions version 9 was released, projects became data segregated, which means that the global constants that were created before were no longer accessible by every project within the environment. You could move global constants to particular projects, but you could not define a global constant in the system settings anymore that would be accessible to all projects. So in order to maintain the functionality of global constants, we introduced project variables. So project variables act like global constants, but at the project level. So any rule, flow, form, anything that uses that flow data, like we mentioned before, also has access to the project variables. It doesn't just have to be flow data, by the way. There are other cases where you can access these project variables within your project. I'm just trying to give the example here that these are pretty universal within the projects. Now, there is a workaround to this. You could define one project as a dependency upon which all other projects are linked, and in that project have project variables that could be used by all projects, creating a pseudo-global constants. But the reason that global constants are no longer utilized in their intended form is because of deployments. Trying to deploy project-specific entities and not bringing the global constants with them, which are defined in the system default project, would create problems when moving projects between environments and break dependencies. So this is the solution instead. So how do these work? Project variables do provide the same functionality as mentioned before. They can be defined and used in multiple designers, and you can even specify the type of variable that give it different properties. Outside of the default types like string, boolean, integer, you can also set it as password, which masks the value. You could set it as a rich string, which allows you to use rich text formatting on that particular value. And you can even set it as a secured constant, which encrypts the value. So I think the best way to demonstrate this functionality is to jump right into the environment itself, if you'll follow me. Here we are inside of my decisions environment. Now, you can find the project variables when you go to Manage, Configuration, and Variables. And here you'll see the Constants section. When you click on that, you will see the different constants that you can make, as well as an option to reset all of the project constants or to add a new one. As you can see, I've made 3 separate constants: a password constant, a rich string constant, and a secure constant. When you create a constant, you'll go to Add Defined Constant, specify the name of the constant, which I will call test, specify the type of constant, I will make this a normal string, and then you specify a value for that constant. So I will specify this as test value. Down here, it will populate the toolbox category and the toolbox subcategory. The toolbox subcategory is always going to be the name of the project that this constant is being created in by default. So save that, and now it's accessible here. So if we go into one of our flows, you can see here that when I try to select from my flow data, I have all constants available. These can be found under Project Constants Demo, the name of the project, and then you pick the constant from here. So if I want to pass along that text value, I'm going to select this. It is already going into my form, and I will run the debugger, and you will see that it appears right here. Now, I mentioned I have a rich text value in there. When you pass along a rich text value, you will see that it has HTML formatting as displayed here. Trying to display this inside of a normal text box is not going to function properly. So I had to use a rich text label in order to get this to look how we want it to. Now, you'll see I also have the masked constant and the secured constant. The secured constant is an encrypted constant that has its value encrypted inside the database. And I can show you what that looks like real quick. So if I were to right click here and go to the query editor, I want to select all stuff, my flow constants. And when I run this and go to the bottom here, you'll see my test value is the newest one. Here's my encrypted value. It is a secured constant type which encrypts its value in the database. The user will be able to see it on their end when they run the flow. So if I go back in here in my fetch constants, and instead I'm going to map in the secret constant, you'll see it displays the actual value here, but the value is encrypted on the database side. Now I mentioned global variables earlier, right? And I mentioned that you can't use them until you move them into a project. So let me show you how to do that as well. Over here under designers, lookup lists, you'll see all of the different global constants. So here I have a global number that was created and I want to move it to my project. I would simply right click it, select move to project, and then specify the project that I want to send it to, which in this case is going to be the project constants demo. Now when I go back to that project and I go into my variable constants, you will see that it exists here and therefore can be accessed from the flow. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this helped.